everyone, it's Karen from Create Your Future. Today I'm going to talk about intentions, the difference between intentions and affirmations, since there was a question about that in one of the comments, and when to affirm. So intentions and affirmations in terms of manifesting are essentially the same thing. So vocabulary wise, an intention is just an aim or a plan, something that you want to accomplish. So if you're setting an intention in a job to say to be more on time, then your intention is to be more on time, right? And then you would do a plan to get there. An affirmation, vocabulary wise, is an encouragement or a positive statement or a positive phrase that encourages you or moves you forward. So with regards to manifesting, there actually is no difference between the two, because everything, when you're saying an intention, you would want to say it in more of an affirmation where it's encouraging you or supporting you or pushing you towards what you want. But an intention is just like your aim, your plan. What are you working towards? And that could be something in alignment with what you're working towards or opposite. So for example, if I say, and I just did a video with Amanda last week about when people say like nothing is working, right? That is an intention in a manifesting way, because you are setting that out to the universe and that's going to get pushed out. It's not an intention that you want to set. It's not something you want to see happen, but it is an intention and you are affirming it. So it's an affirmation because you're affirming that it is true, that it's not working, whether or not you knew that before you did it or not, or you did it intentionally on purpose. That is different. But anytime with manifesting, intentions and affirmations are essentially the same thing. It's just a matter of what you're thinking and what you're saying to yourself and what you're saying to other people. So I know I saw people asking in the questions, don't get caught up about the difference between the two, because it doesn't actually matter. In manifestation terms, you can use that interchangeably, because for example, especially like when you're starting out or when it's something you feel better saying, I intend that this person calls me. That's great. But as you progress, like maybe you stop using I intend and you just say, this person calls me. That's fine. I don't necessarily use I intend before my intentions anymore very often. I think I don't really think I use that very much at all anymore. I did in the beginning. I don't know. I've just moved away from it. There's nothing wrong with it. It's the way that the intention is worded doesn't matter, as long as it is in alignment with what you want, then you're moving in the right direction. That's why I say what you call it doesn't actually matter, but you do want it to be flowing in the right direction of what you want. So the right affirmation or intention for you is whatever feels good for you and feels like it's moving you in the right direction. That's why language may vary. So for example, I'm the God of my reality. I think it's an affirmation that a lot of people in the beginning feel uncomfortable with, and they think that's kind of weird, and they don't feel comfortable with it. So if at that point you don't feel comfortable with it, that's fine, don't use it. That's when you would maybe use like an I intend to see that I'm the God of my reality. And then as you do start to see that, maybe you will feel more comfortable in saying I am the God of my reality, and then that affirmation would be more effective to you. Because if you're saying an affirmation that feels wrong to you, there's already like a negative thought behind it usually. Like if I say, I'm the God of my reality, but not that, you can say that and not believe it, but if you're kind of starting out, sometimes you'll have like a nagging thought of like, but I'm not, but like that's not true, but that's weird, but this. So like that would not be an effective affirmation. So you would start with I intend to see that I'm the God of my reality, and then maybe later on you would move on to I'm the God of my reality. Right? So the wording itself doesn't matter. It just means you want it to feel good to you. You want it to feel like a doable next step affirmation where you're like, okay, yes. And that may vary as you prove to yourself that you are in fact the God of your reality, and that manifesting works. So like I would say that the intentions I use now are definitely not the intentions that I used when I first learned about manifesting. And even in things that I may have more doubts, like my intentions are a lot more direct now than they were back then in general, just because I have a strong belief that this works. So I can kind of skip that step because it feels right to me to just jump to the end. And that doesn't necessarily mean, well, the end affirmation is what I mean. So that doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong to do it this way or that way. It just depends on where you're at. So the best way to think about what intention is right for you in that moment is just, first you think about, okay, what do I want? And then you think about how that wording, you play around with different wording and see which one feels good. So like say you were working on communication from a specific person, you would say, maybe you could say, oh yeah, they're talking to me all the time. I talk to them all the time. Like I can start there and that feels good to me. But if it doesn't, if that feels weird, then maybe that's when you would go with I intend he calls me. And then when you say I intend he calls me all the time, I intend he calls me all the time. And then, as you would start to see that, then maybe you would shift your intention. It really just depends on where you're at and where you're at with your beliefs. So when to affirm, you want to affirm. Usually I recommend like you spend 2 to 3 times a day where you're just focusing all of your energy towards what you want, just for a few minutes. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. And what I mean by focusing your energy is kind of just like saying intentions or doing a technique that makes you feel good, that feels right to you, that feels good to you, that feels like you're in your end, that makes you just, kind of tap into it a little bit. And in between, to make sure you're maintaining that mental diet and that you are still thinking in alignment with what you want in between. And then if you think something opposite, then you would correct it right there. So for example, if I was intending for communication, right? So I would spend maybe like a few minutes, 2 to 3 times a day thinking like, okay, like I talk to them all the time. Like, what does that feel like? What does that look like? Like, what are we talking about? And I'm just really tapping into like that reality where that is true, that is already here now. And then in between, I'm going to be on top of my mental thoughts that if I say like, if I think, oh, wait, where's that message? Like, he hasn't texted me. Then I'm like, wait, nope, he texts me all the time. Like, I know he texts me all the time. What does that feel like? Going back to it for a little bit and then moving on. Or even just, the thought comes up like, oh, I don't think about that because they talk to me all the time. Like, I wouldn't be thinking that if this was true. So I'm going to drop it and just leaving it like that. So that's how often you would really affirm. So outlining like maybe a couple of times in your day, 2-3 times where you're just focusing on your end, and then in between making sure you're not negating everything you're doing. Because if I do my 2 to 3 times a day and I'm focusing on what I want, but then in between I'm like, yeah, no, like he never calls me, he doesn't want to talk to me, blah blah blah, like all this other stuff, then I am undoing all of the momentum that I created towards the direction that you want. Because every time you're saying an intention, it's not getting lost in the ether. You're putting it out, you're sending it out, and it's gaining momentum, it's moving. And the faster it comes is usually just when you don't have opposition. So like if you think about, if I'm pushing something, right, in one direction, and then something is causing resistance and pushing back at me, it's going to take me longer to push that item across. So like if I was pushing a box from here to here, if I'm pushing it and there's no resistance, right, I can push it very quickly. If I'm pushing it and someone's standing on the other end and kind of giving me that resistance, it's going to take me a little longer to get to the other side. I'm going to get there because there's no way that I'm not going to get there. If I'm moving the box here, then I'm moving the box there and nothing's getting in my way. There may be a little pushback. It may take a little more time, but I'm going to get there. So when you're thinking of manifesting, like the pushing of the box, that momentum, that's what you're doing with your intentions. You're putting your momentum towards the direction you want. But when you're having all those negative thoughts, that's the resistance that's pushing it back the other way, right? So you're never really going backwards, but like you're just like here, right? It may take you a little longer. So how do you get rid of that resistance? You stop having those negative thoughts. And I know I'm saying it like it's easy, but it's about just being aware and having that mental diet and making sure that you are kind of balancing that out where, okay, you're focusing on your end a couple of times a day, but in between you're not just, because if I'm like, he's calling me all the time, 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 and then I'm like, nope, never calls me, then like I'm right here, right? And trying to move this way and these thoughts are pushing me back that way, you don't want that, right? So when you think about it like that, then you just have to be aware. And if you are thinking to yourself right now, oh wow, but this is so hard, it's going to be hard if you're now affirming that it is true, that it is hard. You're making an intention unintentionally that it is hard. So instead, this is easy. this is easy. And if that's too hard, that's when you pull in that, no, I intend that I see that this is easier. I intend that every single day this gets easier for me. Every single day this gets easier and easier for me. Every single day it's easier for me to only think of what I want. Every single day it's easier for me to only think of my end. Or again, if that doesn't feel good at the moment, I intend that every single day it's easier for me to only think of my end. So that's how you can play around with the wording. One more thing I want to say about wording, about the negation of the don't, and don't, not this, like not that. People usually say don't use negations in your intentions. The reason for that is just our mind thinks in pictures. So if you think about, so for example, if I say don't think of a pink duck, you just thought of a pink duck, or you thought of a duck, at the very least you thought of a duck and you saw it in your mind, because your mind does not have a picture of not pink duck. Like that doesn't exist in your mind in a picture. Like that's, you'd have to think of the pink duck to think of the not of it, right? So when you would say something like that, your mind goes to the opposite. So when you're thinking about something like as opposed to, so for example, sometimes negations are fine, and that's if you already have a picture of that negation that is going to come up, as opposed to like the not having of it. So for example, he can't live without me. Like that is a phrase that is commonly used. So we do have a mental picture in our heads about what does he can't live without me look like, or she can't live without me. That looks like someone just being all over you, like not wanting to leave you alone, being on top of you 24/7. So that's a picture that comes to your mind automatically when you think of he can't live without me. You don't think of the opposite just because that's like a commonly used phrase. But for the most part, then you don't have that negation in mind. So when you use negations, you're really thinking of the lack of it. So that's what you want to be cautious of with the negations. So for example, I'm trying to think of a negation that people don't have a picture of. There's so many, but like I can't think of one right now. So if I say I want him to stop ghosting me, right? Whatever. So stop ghosting me. There's no mental picture for that. The mental picture is ghosting. So when you say he's going to stop ghosting me, then you're thinking about the ghosting and then the stopping of it, as opposed to the automatically texting and calling and communication constantly coming to your mind, which is why you would, instead of saying not ghosting or not texting me or whatever negation thing, you would say he always calls me, he's always texting me, we're always in communication, because that's going to bring about that mental picture in your mind of having the communication. So that's the thing about the negation, that most of the things we just do not have a mental picture of the not of it, and we have to think of the lack of it to think of the opposite, and then that intention is not going to work. So just be aware of that when you're wording your intentions. Obviously, we do have coaching, and if you would like some help with some intentions for your situation or just some support, the link is in the description below. I also have 2 courses out. One focuses on just generally manifesting multiple things at once, as well as just making manifesting feel easy for you. And the other one is specifically about living in the end. Both courses are great for any situation that you're trying to manifest. I did them that way on purpose because you can use them for anything that you want to manifest. And then you can use them again if you think of something else. And again, the same techniques are going to apply. Also, I do give different examples in each course for different situations. And the one about the course that's about manifesting multiple things at once does have a meditation in it that focuses on helping you feel like manifesting is easy. So if you're struggling with that, this is hard, this is hard, this is hard, like that may be a good thing for you to have, because you can replay it as many times as you want. So anyways, I'll see you guys next time. Bye, everyone.